All organisms on Earth are made from the same basic part, mostly proteins. Proteins are the building blocks of life and can have billions of different shapes. You can imagine them as 3D puzzle pieces. There are billions of different puzzle pieces your enemies can use to construct their bodies. Why is this important? Because proteins are in a way the language of the microworld. Cells don't have eyes or ears, so to tell friend from foe, they have to touch them and recognize if their protein is part of a friend or part of an enemy. Recognizing means that cells have countless tiny devices called receptors that are able to connect with a specific protein puzzle piece. So your cells have tiny puzzle pieces on their outsides that are able to click together or recognize other protein puzzle pieces. When a cell connects together with a protein and recognizes it as enemy, it knows that it has to attack. Only if your cells can make this distinction between friend or foe is your immune system able to fight an invader. But since there are billions of possible protein puzzle pieces, this means there are billions of possible enemy puzzle pieces. This is also one of the reasons we still have to deal with diseases like the flu each year. The influenza virus mutates very rapidly, and so the proteins that make up its hull constantly change a tiny bit. The soldiers of your innate immune system have a large number of the puzzle pieces for common bacteria and viruses memorized. That's why they are your all-purpose weapons. So, in the process, I learn all of these incredibly wonderful theories that the smartest people who have ever lived have developed over the last 500 years that help us make better decisions and become better people. For example, I learned about Immanuel Kant and the categorical imperative. So, Kant says when we're about to do something, we have to design a rule or a maxim that we could use to be universal. Meaning we have to imagine, what if everyone did what we're about to do? What would happen to the world? Would it be okay, or would it get all screwed up? So the maxim I'm designing here is something like anytime two people are in any kind of negotiation, one of them can drag into the negotiation an entirely unrelated global calamity and tell the other person that they shouldn't care about whatever they care about because they should care about that instead. That world would suck, right? Like, your sister borrows $5 from you, you ask for it back. She says, "How dare you care about $5 when the polar ice caps are melting?" No one wants to live in this world, right? Kant also says, by the way, that you should treat people as ends in themselves and not a means to an end, meaning you shouldn't use people to get what you want. Well, that's what I was doing. Animals have been used in research aimed at improving human welfare for centuries, typically at the cost of their lives. This practice reflects the widespread belief that human lives are more valuable than non-human lives. People have different views about the ethics of animal testing and how it's conducted. But whatever your opinion, this scenario raises an important philosophical question. How do we determine the value of a life, whether human or non-human? One tool philosophers have used to consider this question is moral status. Beings with moral status should have their needs and interests taken into consideration by those making decisions that impact them. Traditionally, moral status has been seen as binary. Either a being's interests matter for their own sake, or they don't. And historically, many philosophers believed that humans had moral status and other animals didn't. Some contemporary philosophers like Shelley Kagan have argued that moral status comes in degrees. But even in this model, he argues that people have the most moral status. However, determining what grants any degree of moral status can be difficult. Enlightenment philosopher Immanuel Kant thought humans have moral status because of their rational nature and ability to will their actions. A binary conception of moral status then suggests that these capacities are persons, bearing full moral status, while all other creatures are things without moral status. But thinkers like Christine Korsgaard have argued a Kantian view should include many non-human animals because of how they value their own good. Around 30% of our planet is covered in trees. Trees are majestic, help biodiversity, and can reduce climate change, but we're cutting them down at an alarming rate. Since the start of human civilization, it's estimated that we've cut down almost half the trees on Earth. So what would happen if all of us, and that's all 7.7 billion of us, planted a tree? Well, there might be 7.7 billion of us, but it's estimated there are currently over 3 trillion trees on the planet. 7.7 billion more trees would be a valuable step forward. But we'd need to go further to make a really substantial difference to the environment. But we could. In fact, according to one estimate, if we planted 1.2 trillion trees, we'd cancel out a decade's worth of CO2 emissions by the time the forests mature. So that's more like 160 trees per person. Trees take carbon dioxide out of the air and release oxygen, making them a natural source of carbon capture. Planting 1.2 trillion more trees could capture up to 100 gigatons of CO2, on top of the 400 gigatons captured by all our existing trees. Trees planted near the equator can be especially beneficial as they grow much faster in the warm, wet, and humid environment. Let's imagine that happened. In as little as 20 or 30 years, entire woodlands and forests would be established. And in 100 years, these trees would grow and mature, safeguarding habitats that otherwise get cut down. We'd also see a rise in biodiversity as trees get older and start to decompose, because they, along with dead trees, offer a habitat to all kinds of fungi and insects. On top of this, we could see a positive impact on our mental health, as studies have shown trees can lower stress and make people happier. One thing that is nuclear to defeating procrastination once and for all, and which is actually a common denominator to any technique, system, or habit you can start implementing, is momentum. The idea is very simple. Any task or project becomes easier once you start working on it. Okay, so think about this. You may notice that when you have a pretty lazy day, it feels even more difficult to do things. So if you didn't do anything in the morning, you may find that it may be actually difficult to do some basic tasks like clean the dishes or going outside for a walk with your dog. On the other hand, when you're having a very productive day, it feels like you're on a roll. As you go through these tasks and you accomplish those tasks, take off those items in your to-do list, it seems like getting things done is actually easier than you realized before. And this is a basic example of what momentum does for you. It has a lot to do with your confidence in your own work and energy, as well as your ability to trust yourself to actually get things done. And for a lot of people, working on the same type of tasks all the time while using the same tools, mindset, and resources for several hours is one of the things that contribute a lot to procrastination. And it also contributes to that feeling of lack of progress. That is really unhelpful when trying to boost your confidence in your work and momentum in general. So, diversifying the type of tasks, the resources you need, as well as the level of challenge, can be a really positive way for you to diversify the items in your to-do list and gain that momentum back.
Thank you for watching this video. Will help you a lot, and subscribe our channel Vital PTE Academy to see more education related videos of PTE Academy. I will meet you in next video.